your host for the show, Bob Irwin. We are coming to you live from the downtown office of Alan Butel. He's an attorney here locally. We've done some cases together, and he actually invited me to use his office space for broadcasting the show, which I really appreciate. So we set up down here, and Alan, if you need a criminal defense or civil litigation attorney, does that kind of work, and he's frequently a guest here on the Fired Up Show. So we give him that plug in here in case you are looking for a civil litigation or criminal defense attorney. He handles most general stuff like that. This show is about guns, related politics, and self-defense issues. Fired Up is on KSHP Radio, 1400 AM, and on YouTube. Now, we put out a new YouTube show every Thursday evening at 5 o'clock Pacific time. The Sunday radio show is a rebroadcast of this show, which appears on Sunday mornings between 9 and 10 a.m. at the aforementioned 1400 AM radio. It streams worldwide, of course, as does the YouTube show. So we are all set. On Sunday morning, if you've missed anything on the show, you can tune us in and listen to that when you're getting ready for church. The YouTube shows remain on the air. They are on the website for this show, firedupwithbobirwin.com. They're there backing up about 5 years now, so you can look and see what I said wrong 3 years ago, and it's still there haunting me. And my guest tonight is terrorism expert and firearms instructor Lenny Davis. Hi again, Lenny.
Hello, Bob.
A little bit of your background for somebody who possibly hasn't heard of you.
Well, there's a couple of people out there. I'm not sure where, but there's a couple of people. My name's Lenny Davis, and I'm a retired special agent with the Department of Homeland Security. And I spent 8 years as a anti-terrorism subject matter expert for the State Department, going all over the world, teaching tactics and anti-terrorism related subjects. And for the last couple of years, I have been the Director of Investigations here for Techstratics International here in Las Vegas. We're a security training and private investigations firm.
Good. Everyone in law enforcement everywhere in the world knows Lenny. I went down to renew my concealed carry permit the other day, which I taught the class for years and years and so forth. And what a zoo! But there was a guy there that knew me, and he said, I was listening to you talking to the guy sitting next to you. I recognize your voice. You're Bob Irwin. You have a radio show. And I said, yeah, I listened to that. And I said, he looks like a retired cop. Obviously, they have this look because they look at people instead of the surrounding area. Anyway, I said, where are you retired from? And he flipped through his credentials, and it says Homeland Security. And I said, Homeland Security? You know Lenny Davis? Yeah, I know Lenny. He's still around. Well, he must be old. Oh, well, everybody knows
if
Lenny Davis.
I got a call the other day from a friend of mine who is teaching in Niger in Central Africa, and I had taught a class in Virginia for the Niger anti-terrorism team, and so I ran the range for the pistols. And of course, every day you have to do the range rules. And of course, I always said, range rule number 1, don't shoot Lenny.
Yes.
And my friend had to Skype me from Niger because he said, I completely lost it this morning. We were reading the range rules in Niger, and he said, range rule number 1, treat every firearm as they're loaded. And the student put his hand up and he says, no, Mr. Mark, that's wrong. The first rule is don't shoot Lenny. So 8,000 miles away, they know me.
That's probably a good idea when you're the range master.
Yes.
I ran a few ranges myself, and nobody shot me, and I'm always grateful for that. This show is about guns and related politics and generally self-defense issues. We're going to cross over in a couple of things this afternoon, but I want you to understand when you listen to the show, we are giving information on how to avoid getting in trouble if you have to use a gun for self-defense, how to avoid the civil lawsuits, how to avoid going to jail. And so we use incidents that happened across the country. I've got 5 or 6 of them on today's show. I don't generally use the names of the participants involved. I do use the states because states' laws obviously vary. But the disclaimer here is if you are involved in a incident now where you have shot someone or you're involved in a self-defense lawsuit, get local counsel. The laws vary dramatically from state to state. And what advice we give you here is general advice to how to stay out of jail and how to react to the responding police and so forth. It is not to give you legal advice because your case needs to be handled by a local attorney who understands the rules in the state, county, or city that you live in. So obviously the thing to tell you is what's a good shooting in Nevada is not a good shooting in New York City. Clearly, no matter what the circumstances. So those are the opposite ends of the spectrum, but they're different in between all of those places. So local counsel,
40 miles west of here.
Yes, or
California.
in California. Generally, this is, you notice this story on the top doesn't have a story number because this is not really a story for the show. It's a story about stories. When I'm surfing through my list for shootings, I ran across a report out of Raleigh, North Carolina on the 13th of July. The station, WRAL.com, it's a Raleigh TV station. The shooting took place in Sanford, North Carolina. The Lee County, this is what the story said. The Lee County Sheriff's Office is investigating after a local resident woman shot and killed an intruder Thursday morning. Deputies said the woman at 320 South Plank Road grabbed her pistol after hearing someone jiggling her doorknob of her mobile home just before 11 a.m. When the woman answered the door, a 29-year-old male who lived on the same street attempted to force his way into the house, got into a struggle with the homeowner. The woman told deputies she fired several shots at the aggressor, who then ran from the front porch. Authorities said the would-be intruder sustained a gunshot wound to the chest and was pronounced dead at the scene. The homeowner's son dialed 911 to report the incident. And the article ended by saying no charges are filed. If no charges are filed, likely her use of deadly force is protected under North Carolina's Stand Your Ground law, which was expanded in 2011. That law now includes standing your ground in businesses and homes and vehicles. So I have the story, and there's a nice story about a lady defending herself. And I said in my original outline, on the face of this, it sounds like a good shooting, but this is an example of why I always pull 2 or 3 or 4 sources, because an update showed up on 7/15/17, 2 days later, from ABC News. A 48-year-old woman in Sanford was arrested Friday at her home by the Lee County Sheriff's Office detectives and charged with first-degree murder in the death of a man she called an intruder at her home. The woman said that she had shot the male trying to force his way in. On Friday, law officers said the investigation revealed her version of events at her residence in the same address in Plank Road didn't match up with the evidence found at the scene. The woman is in jail with no bail. There are always a plethora of news sources about shootings, and the pro-gun and anti-gun sides immediately jump on them and start to use that as an example of, a good shooting, or any idiot that owns a gun shouldn't have one, or whatever their side of it is. We call that fake news sometimes. It's all over the internet. You will find it in the mainstream media as well. They pick up the stories and publish them. And as I said, I picked up this story. This sounds like a great shooting until you find out what really happened. And in this case, this comment in the article, somebody at WARL added the stand your ground idea, as that was not provided by the shooter or the police, and it's put it as an exact quote from the story, that this is a good or bad shooting based on North Carolina's stand your ground law. The broadcast, the original broadcast, simply threw that in. The police didn't tell them that. Their attorneys didn't tell them that. Somebody just wrote it. And this has nothing to do with the North Carolina stand your ground law. This whole thing was just absolute garbage. Apparently it's a murder, and we'll follow it up to see which side prevails here. But obviously that's why in the original story it said the sheriff's office is still investigating and had no comment.
When you sent the script over to me for today's show, and I looked at this, and I immediately went to what really torques me off is when I see the media, and I will use the most prime example is the Ferguson shooting of Michael Brown.
Still.
You know, it's, you know, this whole hands up, don't shoot came from an individual who was a not credible witness, who was his kind of his co-conspirator when he robbed the store, and the media took off with it, and which I think incited the riots. And I tell people all the time, you have to wait until the investigation's done. You have to wait until the evidence is in. You have to wait until all the forensics have been analyzed, the coroner's office has done, you know, the pathologist has done the autopsy, and everything else. And you know, it gets me when the media just runs off with something, and in this case, no pun intended, they went off half-cocked and you know, put a story that sounded okay on its face, but 2 days later, it's
woman shoots guy attempting to break into her house.
Yeah.
Well, except apparently he wasn't. Anyway, Lenny is exactly right on that. The Ferguson shooting that really started all this ball rolling. You know, if you're not familiar, that was a police officer who was actually attacked by a guy that was twice his size and fired in self-defense from his car. And the hands up thing never took place. The media just made that up. The shooter, the officer was exonerated by the county, by the city investigation, by the federal government investigation. They came back and said it's a good shoot. The guy didn't do anything wrong at all. He's, of course, destroyed for life because he can't work there anymore, obviously, because half the town still believes that he's a murderer. We got another one of those working right now in the United States. Mm-hmm. Anyway, don't believe what you see, even on what we think are credible media. Now, for a clearer self-defense incident, this is KKTV 11, reported on 7/11/2017 in Colorado Springs, Colorado. A local resident was justified in shooting and killing an acquaintance who had barged into his home and was charging at him as young children were just several feet away, according to the DA's office announcement on Tuesday. The shooting took place on May 14th. This exoneration by the DA took place on July 11th. This is realistic, forgetting what happened in the shooting when all the investigations have taken place. The family lives in the Georgetown Square townhomes in the 2000 block of North Academy Boulevard. Marital issues were likely a trigger behind the 33-year-old breaking into the shooter's home in the middle of the night, based on the 4th Judicial District Attorney's Office investigation. According to that investigation, the attorney had separated from his wife 1 week prior to the shooting back in May. The separation came on the heels of an incident between his wife, the resident of this house, and the resident's girlfriend. The intruder later had threatened the resident over the phone. 2 days after that phone threat, the resident said he heard a loud boom, which investigators later found was the intruder kicking in the front door of the guy's house. The resident shooter ran to investigate and saw the intruder running up the stairs. This isn't clear in the article, but their bedrooms are upstairs. He is upstairs at the top of the stairway. The guy kicked in the door and is running up the stairs toward him. The resident told authorities he yelled at the intruder to stop and that he was sorry, but the intruder kept coming toward him. He shot the intruder once in the chest. At the time of the incident, the resident's girlfriend and 3 young children were in the home behind him upstairs. The shooting has been ruled by the DA's office as self-defense, and no charges will be filed. This is how you discover real, rational self-defense cases at the end of the investigation. It's certainly a valid self-defense case. 2 months investigation by DA's office had reviewed all the investigative reports, all the crime scene information, and interviewed all of those involved, obviously except the deceased guy. So that's how you determine if it's a good shooting. We have reviews, we have court look at it, we have DA investigators. If you are ever actually involved in a shooting, you will discover a whole army of people trying to determine what happened. Sometimes they included Lundy Davis.
Yeah, times, yeah, in years past it has, and there is a ton of work. It's unbelievable. I mean, if you ever are fortunate enough to actually look at the entire investigation file on a homicide, and this is a pretty open and shut, this is what happened, this was a self-defense shooting, it's justifiable homicide. But I guarantee you there was a lot of work that went into this by investigators and coroners and forensics and evidence technicians and district attorneys. So yeah. It's quite a process, and it doesn't happen overnight. The problem that we see, I think, is a lot of people, they see, well, they watch TV and they solve the crime in 57 minutes, yes. And it's ridiculous. It doesn't work that way, as you well know. But it's hard to talk to somebody. We've had times where I've asked people, I said, you don't realize what goes into this, right? And they go, well, no, I didn't know that. Can't they just do that?
It's, I used to, years ago, I kept a packet that was literally about 9 inches high of a shooting case where nobody died. A child was injured, but he recovered. That was only the file for the defense expert, me. The actual case was 6 or 8 banker boxes. Mm-hmm. It was a police-involved shooting. We had all the guys' training, everybody's comments, all the crime lab reports. I mean, just ad infinitum of information to determine that the officer had made a valid shooting, and he was exonerated in the end of that. But still, I mean, the work that goes in that's why they're expensive cases to defend and expensive cases to prosecute. Quick commercial here for Jerry Creed, attorney at law. He does firearms trusts and Class 3 trusts. He does free consultation. If you have a Class 3 trust or a firearms trust, you need to have it reviewed. The laws are changing constantly, especially this month. You can reach Jerry at 702-806-7777. He was at the gun show with me last weekend, and I put him together with one of our other guest attorneys, Don Green, who was always here. And that was a mistake to introduce 2 attorneys who work different sides of gun stuff. And they talked for an hour and a half and lost me completely. So anyway, Jerry Creed does the gun trust. If he charges, I now know, $750 for a trust. It'll probably amounts to a notebook with everything in it for you to change trustees and add guns and subtract guns, so forth. It's a long, involved process. It is well worth the money. If you have a firearms trust, or more particularly a Class 3 trust, that you think is valid because you did it on the internet or something like that, it's not. The rules are all changed. Have Jerry Creed take a look. This was just a cute story, and it's a nobody dead story, and I kind of like it. This is a self-defense shooting out of Spokane County in Washington. KHQ-TV6, that's an online television station associated with a regular station in Spokane County. This is on the 17th, a couple days ago. A 17-year-old girl in North Spokane County protected herself and her home with dad's gun when a suspected car thief running from the sheriff's deputies came into her house on Monday morning. The incident originally started at 5 a.m. when deputies spotted a stolen car. There was a police pursuit. The subject ditched the car in a field and fled on foot. Deputies set up a perimeter around the field. We're in very, very rural northern Washington near the Idaho border. Watching the Wake Up show on KHQ were the 17-year-old girl's boyfriend and her parents. They relayed to her that there's a car thief on the loose in the area and deputies were searching for him because she's in this camp. It's a house they have on the boonies for vacation. And she's in there by herself. Her boyfriend, on his way over, actually ran into some of the deputies that were searching, asked them what was going on. Then he called the girl to let her know the criminal was in the area of where she was. So she called her dad and asked if she could use one of his guns that's stored there in a safe for protection. He said, yes. Duh. So she gets a gun out of the safe and loads it up. She got the gun, placed it under her pillow, and went back to sleep. A short time later, she woke up to the sound of someone coming into the house. She took her gun and hid behind her makeup vanity. She soon found herself face to face with this guy. She pointed the firearm at the intruder and said, "Who are you? And get the blankety blank out of my house." That worked. He fled the home. As he was running from the house, the girlfriend fired one shot into the ground, apparently to speed him on his way. The suspect got into her boyfriend's ATV, which was parked out front. In rural areas like this, everybody leaves their keys in their car and they don't lock their front doors, which is what caused this. Anyway, he jumped in the ATV and fled. As of this report, the deputies were still searching for the suspect. The girl confirmed who the suspect was. The police had an idea, showed her a picture of him, and that's the right guy. So they just congratulated the girl on doing a great job and left the area. This is a no shots fired at anybody self-defense case. She did fire apparently a safely aimed warning shot into the ground to speed his exit. Probably sped him into stealing the ATV too. And I have to tell you that this is just a great story. This girl is 17 years old, and her boyfriend eventually arrived, and her parents and all the cops and everybody. I generally don't use anybody's name in cases, but the young lady's first name is Kimber, of all things. Sadly, her borrowed handgun from its appearance in the news stories is an H&R 22 revolver, not an actual Kimber. But I have an idea that maybe Kimber will get a gift of a Kimber from somebody around out there. That was just, it was just a cute story. And the fact that the dad was being very specific, saying that, yes, you may borrow one of my locked up guns. She asked permission, hand loaded it, and so forth. It's just, this is America in the 1950s. It's an unusual story for these times. Rural America is real America.
Well, it also shows that the father, has spent some time, obviously, with his daughter with firearms, and she just didn't willy-nilly grab it. She asked permission, which is great. Kind of reminds me of a couple of little girls I used to know who are now grown up. But
yes, it's just a great story, and that the cops congratulated her on doing a fine job, rather than yelling, "What? You're 17 and you got a gun and you're not supposed to have one." And da, 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 da. Will any charges be filed against her for having a pistol in her possession? Of course not. Anyway, good story. I skipped a commercial there. We're always talking about training. If you carry a firearm or keep one in your home, it is really important to learn the rules for that. Where I used to work, the gun store in East Tropicana, I retired from there, for those of you who are not aware of that, several months ago. They offer concealed carry permit classes every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. Their class is a great class. It's well taught. The classes start at 9 in the morning. If you're getting a renewal, you get through about 2:30 in the afternoon. If you're taking an initial CCW, it takes the rest of the day. You'll be there till about 6 o'clock. You can sign up online at thegunstorelasvegas.com. The advantage to the gun store, well, there are two. One is that they run the class every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. You won't be getting on a list and then get told the day before the class they're not having it because only 3 people signed up, whatever. The gun store runs the class Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. It will be on when you show up. It's inexpensive. I think they're charging $55 for renewals now and $75 for the initial class. That includes qualification, the target, the eye and earphones, all that stuff. The only thing the rest you got to do is pay the police department for the permit. And the third advantage of taking the class there is I wrote the outline they're still using, so it's painfully correct in what you can and cannot do.
Concealed,
I think.
Concealed sling and arrow, correct?
Originally, it was a concealed sling. This is a long, involved case, and we're 26 minutes into the show, so there's a good time. And I don't know if you read through this thing, Lenny, this Tulsa World.
Yeah.
This is a real shooting that is really complicated, as real shootings really are. I shortened this one up a lot. If you look up Tulsa World, July 4th shooting in Tulsa, Oklahoma at a fireworks stand, you will find all sorts of local stories on it that are reams of paper about all the details of this. Basically, the 33-year-old son of a fireworks stand operator told Tulsa County detectives that he saw 2 people in a truck steal a box of fireworks. They just took one or 2 and put it in their truck. That prompted him to jump over the counter and point a gun at the suspects to scare them. He then fired a shot because he heard a popping sound, but he wasn't sure if he hit anything with the shot that he fired. He then jumped into the bed of the pickup truck, which is where they put the fireworks. The driver of the truck swerved, driving away in a successful effort to throw him out of the truck. So now he's on the ground with his gun. Then this 32-year-old shot one of the pickup truck's tires. So the driver jumped out and fled on foot when the truck came to a stop. Authorities then found the 15-year-old's body slumped in the seat of the cab of the 27-year-old's truck. These were 2 cousins. One's 27 who grabbed the box. The 15-year-old was the one driving the truck. He got hit by that round that was fired at the truck, and it killed him. The Tulsa County DA filed a first-degree manslaughter charge Friday morning against the shooter under 2 theories: that he fatally shot the 15-year-old during a period of anger, and the decision to shoot was an overreaction to the 15-year-old. 15-year-old's in the truck. He didn't actually steal the box. And his 27-year-old cousin was stealing from fireworks, and that caused the shooter to get all excited and fire around. The assistant DA said the value of what he's accused of stealing, in this case $600, was no longer the threshold for a felony charge because of a change in the law that took effect that month. By that rationale, the 27-year-old cannot be charged with felony murder. If a felony murder case is you committing a crime and a felony crime, and someone else is killed, one of your co-bad guys, or somebody's accidentally shot unrelated, you're charged because you started the ball rolling. Everybody involved is charged with murder. They're not going to charge the 27-year-old with felony murder because the law said you have to steal something worth way more than $600 to meet the threshold of felony murder. This is a lawyer story. The assistant DA said the state caused to question the shooter's action both due to his emotional state and what the cousins did. He said the state's secondary manslaughter fits that theory. So they've charged the guy with secondary manslaughter. Now, the criminal defense attorney for this guy now charged with secondary manslaughter feels the prosecution is blaming the wrong person for the 15-year-old's death. He said the evidence clearly shows the shooter is innocent of any crime, and he alleged the DA's office seems to be just anti-Second Amendment based on its handling of the case, and their charges are outrageous, the defense attorney. He shot the guy running away from the $600 theft, and he shouldn't be charged with a crime. Anyway, it's outrageous in his opinion. Your defense attorneys will always tell you that because it sounds good. But you've got another attorney. You've got a civil attorney involved in this also. Now there's three attorneys: prosecutor, the defense attorney for the criminal case, who says it's outrageous, and the civil attorney. He represents the deceased family, is pleased to see the charges filed against the shooter, who posted a $50,000 bond and is now out of custody. The attorney said, "We've been adamant that this was unjustified and unwarranted. This incident is a larceny at best, a misdemeanor." To the civil attorney, it doesn't matter. He don't care if the guy's convicted of a felony or a misdemeanor or whatever, because he's got, in his case, so you have all three attorneys with different views. They're all have a different axe to grind. If you really want to understand how the system works, find this case, Tulsa World, July 4th shooting in Oklahoma, Tulsa, Oklahoma. And as I shortened it dramatically, but we got three attorneys with three different goals. The civil lawsuit guy is in the best position because he's going to win no matter what, whether the guy's convicted or not convicted. The prosecutor and the defense, criminal defense, can argue between each other whether this is a valid shooting. You probably got from my attitude that it really is a valid charge of second-degree manslaughter, but it should be a felony murder case in any case, and I can see that maybe being changed after the testimony comes in.
Yeah, I read this when I read this earlier. The first thing I saw in this thing was the fact that you can't use deadly force if the threat is going away from you. And this guy took $600 worth of fireworks. Okay, yeah, it's $600, but he didn't point a gun at anybody. He jumped over the counter. He took $600 box of fireworks and ran to a truck, and this guy fires around. The guy doesn't pose a grievous, threat to grievous bodily harm or loss of your life by taking those $600 worth of fireworks. So there's no threat here that would rise, at least that I can see, in my opinion, that would rise to the level of a good use of deadly force.
But he did say he fired the shot kind of accidentally, and he didn't know if it hit anything.
Well, and
doesn't that make it okay?
No, that doesn't make it okay, especially when they forget that statement that he gave to the law enforcement officer is going to be, can and will be used against you.
Absolutely. He admitted to firing the shot, and the only shot fired, and it killed a 15-year-old kid. That's not a defense.
No. I did it sort of accidentally. Well, it sort of accidentally is not accidentally, and it isn't, and it wasn't. I can see this guy being mad because some guy just took him for $600 worth of fireworks, and now he's decided, well, and he fired. And I think what he did is he probably fired the first round and went, oh, I really can't do that. But he's nuts. He was number two. He jumped into the bed of the pickup truck. Folks, this guy's lucky. Well, in a way, he's lucky he's alive. He's going to get prosecuted and probably go to prison, but he'll be alive to do that, because you get thrown out of the back of a pickup truck at any kind of speed, and I'm assuming this kid was trying to get away. You never fire a gun at a vehicle anyway. Yeah, shot the tire out. Yeah, he succeeded in shooting the tire out. he could have been in a lot worse trouble. Just think about it. Here's a a fireworks stand. And what's around a fireworks stand around 4th of July? Usually a bunch of kids, right? Hey, I need more fireworks, you know. And he shoots a tire out of this car or this truck. This kid is a 15-year-old, doesn't have a driver's license, probably not a very experienced driver, at least not in an Oklahoma hayfield. And he loses control because he shot a tire out, and he runs over 15 or 20 kids. He's responsible. The things that went wrong with this are so wrong.
You couldn't imagine a case this bad in real life, and it is. This is a real case. It's
this is probably a case, no matter where you're at, state law wise, jurisdiction. This is probably as good a case as I've ever seen to not use when not to use deadly force, and this never rose to the level of deadly force. Absolutely never.
He grabbed something from a merchant and ran. How many times have we on the show talked about not shooting at fleeing anything? I mean, according to the way their law works, it wasn't even a fleeing felon now. But even if it was a fleeing felon, he'd stole whatever their standard is now, $5,000 worth of fireworks.
Yeah, it just
you're going to shoot at a guy who's carrying $5,000 worth of fireworks?
Yeah, and it's a tragic loss of 2 lives. The 15-year-old boy was killed, and the 32-year-old man that fired it, his life is pretty much over. He's going to have a long prison stretch and go from there.
That's that. This is the only people that win this case are the 3 lawyers.
3 attorneys.
The prosecutor's got a paid job. The criminal defense guy has got a paid job from somebody. The family is apparently providing money for him. Even though he's got a horrible case, you have to try to defend it. And the guy who's sitting pretty no matter what happened is a civil attorney.
Yeah.
Because here it comes. Wanted to mention Grant Defense, one of our sponsors. They are at 5580 South Decatur. It's on the corner of Russell and Decatur in Las Vegas. They're right back to back with the Dewey Animal Shelter. If you know where the Dewey Animal Shelter is, the back door of the Dewey Animal Shelter meets the back door of Grant Defense. They manufacture AR-15s, in that building, their own upper and lower receivers, and assemble them, and they do some amazing work on custom Glock pistols. I would strongly suggest you go over there and take a look if you're in the market for an AR or in the market for a amazing Glock. I'm more impressed with their pistols than I could tell you. Go take a look while you're there. Run over by the Dewey Animal Shelter. It's 100 feet away, and get yourself a guard puppy. And then you'll have a burglar alarm that'll bark and save your life if somebody breaks in your house, and a brand new shiny gun. Grant Defense. Look them up. They're on. They've got a website coming up with all our pictures and so forth. Mr. Grant told me the other day when I was there, it's supposed to be up tomorrow. He's heard that before. Those of you who have built websites know what's going on, but it's supposed to be up tomorrow. It'll be grantdefense.com. Meanwhile, they do have a Facebook page under the same thing. You can look it up there also, and there's pictures of their pistols and ARs and so forth.
I'm sure their ARs and Glocks are housebroken, unlike the puppy that you would probably get from Dewey Animals. Sorry, I couldn't help
Puppies
myself.
are good. You get a rescue puppy, he will do what he can to save your life. Once he's adopted, he's in your house 2 days, he's your guard dog.
Oh yeah,
that's where he lives. You know? They're born and bred to be guard dogs. This is, let me see what we're doing time. Okay, we're all right. WVTM 13 News and AL.com. This was an interesting case. This is Cullman County, Alabama. It was a couple of days ago, 7/17 of 17. A prominent Cullman, that's the name of the town, attorney was shot to death in his home Monday night by an intruder who lawmen say was a 45-year-old mentally ill person who has been obsessed with the victim, the guy he shot, for decades. The intruder came in, struggled with the victim's 70-year-old wife, and then was killed by her inside the couple's home. This is after he shot the attorney. She was also injured and hospitalized in stable condition. Authorities identified the slain homeowner as a 73-year-old Coleman native who had been well-known trial lawyer in the area for 49 years, third-generation attorney, twice served as commissioner of the Alabama State Bar, a really well-known guy in legal circles in that part of Alabama. The shooting happened shortly after 5 p.m. at the home. It's in the 2300 block of County Road 1301, which means something to locals. The Coleman County Sheriff, a fellow named Matt Gentry, said that the mentally ill intruder went into the home with the intention of killing the attorney. He went inside the residence, shot the victim, the sheriff said. After her husband was shot, the wife got into a struggle with the intruder. After a long struggle, she killed the intruder. Separately from these articles, I did discover some anecdotal evidence that the 70-year-old wife was not armed, but she was able to smack the guy down with a heavy vase and actually kill him.
Oh, wow.
Beating his head in. That's not in the reports here. The murderer had brought the pistol with him to the home and was legally allowed to own the gun. The victim and the murderer were both pronounced dead at the scene. The victim's wife was transported to Coleman Regional Medical Center. She's okay, other than losing her husband, obviously. The sheriff confirmed the murderer knocked on the front door, was let in the house. He said, Coleman County is a tight-knit community. We live in a community where we all help each other. It's not uncommon for citizens in Coleman County to know that maybe somebody needs help or needs an attorney, and they would simply come over to this guy's house and ask for legal advice. And he would sit him down with a cup of coffee and explain it to him. This is just 1850s Northern Alabama. It's not uncommon for people to come to the door asking for help, and you give help. The killer definitely was suffering mental illness, according to Sheriff Gentry. Authorities believe he had targeted the elderly attorney over a 1997 case, even though the attorney, his victim, was not involved in that case in any way. For the last decade, he believed the victim had a part to play in a case he was involved in, a lawsuit from his ex-wife or something. And the sheriff said the murderer became infatuated with this attorney, even though the attorney had no connection at all. They'd never met. This attorney had never worked on a case as a judge, as a lawyer, as a review, anything. There's no connection between the two. Lots of things you can say here. This is a rural community, and obviously from the obits that are accompanying this, this was a great gentleman who was a pillar of this community and didn't deserve to die. The guy was able to buy a gun legally because that portion of Alabama does not send their mental health records into the NICS system. So he was able to buy the gun legally just a couple of days before he killed this guy. That's a whole nother issue, whether mentally deranged people should be reported, because we have HIPAA laws that doctors are afraid to report them, and that needs to be changed. Even the most, there aren't a lot more pro-gun guys than the two of us sitting here, but if somebody is that mentally unbalanced and threatening to kill people, they need to be in the NICS background check, so somebody can at least go talk to them before they release the gun.
Yeah, I saw this case, and I was like, it reminded me of the Aurora, Colorado shooter. He was under mental health treatment, and I guess some of his doctor was shocked at what he was thinking, but never, because of HIPAA laws, reported it to anyone.
Yeah, if you don't remember, that was the guy who shot up the movie theater and killed, I think, 17 people at that theater. The other half to this story is even though the judge knew who this guy was because threats had come in and he knew the guy was stalking him wrongly, but he didn't recognize him. They'd never met face to face. And so I presume he'd seen his picture somewhere, but you wouldn't remember that. All of us living in the world today have people who don't like us many times that we aren't even aware they don't like us. Especially law enforcement people. I've run into people that would walk into the gun store or see me at a gun show and say, "Hi, Bob, how you doing?" And I don't know if I arrested him or, he took a class somewhere that we were together. I recognize the face, but I have no idea. And especially law enforcement people or judges or attorneys, you have people out there, they were just one of many, many cases, and you weren't doing something personal to them, and it's over, and you don't remember them. And here, this guy, this is over a 1997 case. This guy is stalking this judge and kills him in 2017.
I after a career of 31 years in law enforcement, there's a lot of people that are out there that I cross paths with doing my job, and some of them are still incarcerated, some of them got incarcerated, and you always kind of have to be prepared.
Yeah, so you stay armed, stay alert, carry your gun wherever you go. You may need to protect somebody, yourself or your family, but it goes way longer than that. There are people out there. Remember the neighbor that you had a fight with 15 years ago and you got him thrown out of the apartment building and you never thought about it since? And he hated you and hated you all these years. Is he still out there? Most of them, the grudges go away after a while, but.
Well, you saw the video of the neighbor fence problem. I believe it was Wisconsin or somewhere in the Midwest, where he had a surveillance video up on his house, and his neighbor got mad because he was mowing the fence. There was some dispute about the fence between their properties,
right? And
this guy attacked him with a firearm, and I believe he wounded him, but he killed the assailant. That was his next door neighbor. Yeah. And well, he's actually a guy who lived there, but it wasn't
just a grudge.
A grudge. And Bob and I both, in the years of doing law enforcement, we've both seen people who have been killed for the most stupid, senseless reasons you could imagine. And
the normal people wouldn't think about that. Why would you kill somebody over that? Why would you risk going to prison? And all this stuff. They don't think that way.
Yeah.
And anyway, this just crossed my desk yesterday or day before when I was working on the outline. The Second Amendment Foundation just reported on the 17th. They filed a lawsuit against the head of the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services on behalf of several Michigan residents who are trying to be foster parents or adoptive parents. And what's going on here basically is the Department of Health and Human Services determined that because they had firearms in their homes, it was not a safe environment for a foster child or an adoptive child. The Second Amendment Foundation has filed a lawsuit. It's in federal court, and it will be held in the Western District of Michigan. And we'll stay on top of this. They filed another one in 2016 against one of the Oklahoma counties, did exactly the same thing. And for those of you who follow the news, we had the same thing here in Nevada 4 years ago. We had Health and Human Services deciding that foster parents couldn't have firearms if they were going to be foster parents. And that was successfully beaten in Nevada. They got a rule change finally, arguing in front of the legislature, that guns and ammunition could be stored. Now, they had to be stored in the house. First, they couldn't be in the house was the rule. And then they came down and said, well, okay, you can have them. They have to be locked in a safe at all times. So therefore, they're useless for self-defense. Even if the parents in these Nevada cases had CCW permits, had training, all that. I vaguely recall testifying at one of the legislative hearings over this issue. Because I made the point with the Assembly Committee that foster children tend to have a parent out there somewhere who wants them back. So these kids are at higher risk than the average kid for a child abduction. They get them all the time. And to tell the foster parents who now become a target, they're not allowed to have a gun loaded in their house, even if they have a CCW permit, et cetera, was absolutely just stupid. These kids are at higher risk than the average child, and they're safe from their parents. They have permits, they have training. They're not going to leave the gun where kid is going to pick it up and kill themselves with it, etc. Anyway, there's this case. The Second Amendment is taking this case. Hopefully, they'll lose in Michigan and it'll go to the U.S. Supreme Court.
Well, I would love to see.
I don't want to say hopefully they lose, but the adoptive parent in this case is a 100% disabled Marine Corps veteran. He's in a wheelchair, etc. And
I would always love to see. I've always said when I saw this and when you were testifying a few years ago, I would have loved to have seen them turn down law enforcement officers. Well, you can't be an adoptive parent or a foster parent because you have a gun. Well, yeah.
That came up in the hearings here.
Yeah. So,
well, what if I'm a law enforcement officer and the idiot Democrat who will go unnamed, who was in charge of the committee that was hearing this, said, well, in this case, they're not.
Right.
So it doesn't matter for what we're talking about. But it does matter. You're making a law. Yeah. Anyway.
That doesn't make a hill of beans to certain people.
Let me see, we're right on time. Oh, we're 8 minutes away. So I'm going to skip that one. This one I'm not going to skip. A writer named Mark A. Taft wrote on the Keep and Bear Arms website on the 14th. A comment, the National Rifle Association made some comments on the death of Philando Castillo. You may recall he is a black individual who has a CCW, and he was shot by a police officer who apparently misread the situation or whatever. Anyway, this guy got shot dead, and he was trying to show his ID, and the officer couldn't hear him because the window was rolled up or whatever. The NRA didn't enter into the fray on that, and they finally came out with a statement through their lady named Deanna Lozich, special assistant, the NRA, the communication, and she has a conservative talk show apparently. She called the incident a terrible tragedy that could have been avoided had the CCW holder acted better. This was clearly a wrongful shooting by the police officer. He misread it, panicked, I don't know what, but it's a bad shooting. And the fact that the NRA would not come out and say, we defend law enforcement wherever, but this was a bad shooting. They wouldn't. And Mr. Taft's comment at the end of his little essay was, it's easy to understand why black people think gun owners are all racists, because the NRA made that kind of statement without saying anything that said, we're sorry the guy got killed. He was the innocent victim. He was an innocent victim. So I got to agree with him. On occasion, law enforcement officer is wrong or misreads the threat. Police are subject to human error. I've defended officers in lawsuits that have involved that sort of thing. Race is not an issue in most confrontations. It's just good guys and bad guys. And nobody should care for any reason who was black and who was white.
Well, and in this case, the officer was tried, and he was found not guilty.
Yep.
I agree. It was he misread it. I wasn't there, but also the fact of how many times do we when we've taught CCW classes what you do and what you don't do when a law enforcement officer comes. The thing that made me the maddest about this was, yes, it was a shooting. No, the police officer that killed him was not white. He was a Hispanic. That doesn't matter to me at all. But what irked me the most about this case is Mr. Castillo's girlfriend live streamed this on Facebook as he is dying instead of calling 911 or trying to do anything. And she immediately tries to make this an issue. At the end of the day, it was probably a bad call. This officer's been terminated from the police department, but he was found not guilty of any criminal act, problems with that. So I don't, it's a tough call because I've been there. I've pressed the trigger on another human being. I don't like it. I didn't like it then. I don't like it now, but I would do it in a heartbeat because it was my life or his.
I just can't imagine in this day and age a police officer of any experience making that decision based on his color. I don't think this had anything to do.
I don't think it had anything to do with his color. I think it was his actions. And
the NRA, I think, could have said, it's unfortunate the gentleman died. He was a concealed weapon holder. He was, well liked in the community. They just left that out.
Yeah.
Would have been nice, like say in court, to throw a bone to the other side and say, you know what? Anyway, I'm just annoys me. The NRA is sometimes needs to look at real people. Upcoming gun shows: Crossroads of the West, July 29th and 30th at the Reno Convention Center. I have some passes for that also if you'd like to attend. I'm not at the gun store anymore, so you got to send me an email or a text. Or you can leave a message on the phone number on the wall with your address, please. Don't say, hi, this is Fred. I need a gun show pass. Click. Got to tell me where to send it, and I will get it to you in a few days. Crossroads of the West again, August 26 and 27 at Cashman Field. We will be at that show there. If you want to discuss anything that has come up in gun laws, you don't want to talk to me or leave a text message or leave a recording on my office recorder that says, hi, I'm Fred, I've got an illegal gun, what should I do? This is my number. Don't do that. That's talk to me in person, and we'll take care of that. Fired Up again, the radio show repeats on Sundays at 9 a.m. and we're here every Thursday or so, usually at 5 o'clock with a new show. And next week's guest, it says XXXX because I haven't booked anybody to do that yet. Started making phone calls today. I got to stay a week ahead of myself to do this. So hopefully I won't be here by myself tomorrow. If you are an attorney or a firearms expert of some sort who is interested in appearing on the show, please call the number and I will discuss with you getting on. We tape every Thursday. It takes an hour out of your time every month or two. Another gun defense attorney would be good. And I will take the pressure off that. Honestly, the attorneys that work on the show are jammed. They are one after the other. They get a lot of work, and that causes them not to be here for the show. Anyway, so we try and tape on Thursday.
I'm unemployed or something?
No, you're not the attorney. No, I can get law enforcement guys all the time, but I'd like to have a legal opinion on some of this stuff,
of course,
if I can. We are up at 5:59. It says on my little clock on the wall. So We will be here next week with a surprise guest. And thank you so much for watching Fired Up. I hope you found it entertaining and educational. Please take some training if you're carrying a gun. And we'll be back next week. Lenny, thank you again.
Thank you, sir.
You folks have a nice weekend. Try and stay cool.